there's something almost sacred about the feeling of like feeling yourself and, feeling what sensations are arising and allowing them to exist.
Welcome to the Feminine Alchemy Podcast, where we explore the truth about the feminine, the peaceful, the wild, and the visceral. I'm your host, J.N. Behringer, joined by my co-hosts, Julie Dean Richards and Kaylee Rose. Each week, we explore the deep mysteries of the feminine and help listeners apply them to their daily lives in a practical way. Join us to unlock the hidden wisdoms your soul has been waiting for. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Feminine Alchemy. I am so excited for this conversation, you guys. It's one I have been waiting for a long time. We have an amazing, amazing guest, and her name is Shari Grigsby. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about her so you can understand her amazing juiciness that she's bringing to the table. So, Shari Grigsby is a confidence and feminine embodiment coach and master practitioner of NLP, which for people who don't know what NLP is, that's neuro-linguistic programming. I'm also certified, so I love that she does this. With expertise in mindset, body connection, and feminine energy, she helps women reconnect with themselves, embrace their power, and radiate confidence. Having overcome her own struggles with self-doubt and disconnection, Shari is passionate about guiding women to feel confident at home in their bodies and unapologetically themselves. Woo! I'm so excited. Say hello, Shari.
Hello.
Oh, we're so excited to have you here. I cannot wait to dive into this conversation. We're going to be talking about women, their bodies, sexuality, femininity, all the things. I'm so excited to hear about your personal journey. But before the show, we had talked about that you didn't know about your astrology and
Yes.
and what was coming up for you. So I will, I'm going to just tell everyone so you can get a peek into Shari. And this is perfect for her. So I'll explain why. She is an Aries sun. She's a Capricorn moon, and she's a Virgo rising, which is so beautiful. Aries actually has to do with the body and the self. So it's beautiful that this journey has taken you to the body, to the self. She also has Venus conjunct her sun, which is part of the reason she's so into the femininity piece. She is practical, logical, on her journey of self-discovery. So, and I just already feel like I vibe with you so much because we both have that Capricorn moon and all that earth in your chart. But I'm just so excited to have you here. So I would love to hear more about you and your journey.
Yes, I'm so excited to be here too. Really, my journey starts way back when I was a young mom. So I've got 4 kids, and I had them all by the time I was 26. I have my oldest is a girl, and then 22 months later, I had twin boys. And then 3 years later, I had my youngest daughter. And I really lost myself in motherhood a lot. Like I grew up this whole, oh, go be a mom. This is the most important thing you could do is be a mom. Like I knew that, and I knew I always wanted to do that. Yet when it came to the time to be a mom, it wasn't what I expected. I was like, I should be more fulfilled in this. I had a lot of expectation wrapped up in like, oh, well, I'm doing the thing. I have the house. I have the husband. I have the kids. Why am I unfulfilled? Why am I unhappy? And so I would chase different things that were mine. Like I taught piano lessons for a little bit, and I got into some MLMs for a little bit. And then one of the MLMs drugged me into some personal development. And it was there where I started learning more about myself. And I'm like, oh, I actually have choices. Like I have ownership over my life. Like I don't have to feel this way anymore. So I did like a deep dive after that. I just went all in. That's kind of how I am. I'm a whole ass person, not a half ass person. And so we just go all in. And really started to understand myself in a way that made sense for the first time and started to give myself meaning of who I am, what I want to do in this world. And then I felt the call to help other women learn what I had learned. I go on a little bit and learn more personal development journey. And over the years, I had a lot of struggles in my marriage. I had a lot of challenges that would come up, and we would work on fixing things. I would like kind of force him very heavily in my masculine at that point. I didn't know that because I didn't know enough about masculine and feminine energy. I was very heavily in my masculine. He was very much more in his feminine of just like acquiescing. I could just say, this is how it's going to be. He would just say, okay. And then we had kind of a catalyst that came together. We'll talk about that later, but that led us to do some deeper work in the realm of sexuality. With our relationship, we came across a woman who's a holistic sex and relationship coach. And we were like, I think we need to take her program because we're not figuring this out. We had all these tools. We're both certified in NLP. We both know all these things, yet we were still fighting. And we're like, what is wrong? So we did this course. We peeled back layers. And it was there when I started learning more about feminine energy, all those things. And I'm like, wow, I'm heavily in my masculine and it is really causing some problems. So how about I learn how to not do that anymore? And our relationship, it's not been perfect afterwards because nobody's is, but we've worked through a lot of the hard stuff to get to where we are now. And now I can let him lead us instead of me being the one making all the decisions and all those things. So very big story condensed into a little bit.
Wow. I love to hear that. I actually love to hear the layer upon layer piece because that's the way that it happens, right? That's a real journey it's piece by piece, it's layer on layer. And I think so for people listening, I did mention, right, what NLP is, neuro-linguistic programming, but can you tell people who don't know what that is a little bit more about it?
Yeah, so it's really how language affects the nervous system. You know, there's a difference in words. Like if you were to think of, you know, talking about exercise, for example, I love to give this example because it's like, okay, when you hear exercise, do you really want to do it? Like for me, I have a reference of exercise being like Richard Simmons and my mom starting and stopping and not being like super consistent. And I'm like, I don't want to exercise. And so for years, I wasn't consistent to exercise because I was calling it exercise. But when I learned how to shift that word and go to train, I was like, oh, I want to train because that means like I'm working towards something. Everything shifted for me. And now I've made it kind of who I am to be training, to be working out. I can say the word exercise. I still don't love that word. But everybody has those references. So it's really playing on what references are going on in your mind. You know, the brain is like a big computer, has all these files, and being able to go in, look at those files. Are they working for you? And if they're not working for you, hey, let's rewrite them a little bit.
Yeah. And the way I have used it too is it can really help you during discussions, conflicts, to help the other person see your perspective. It is a way that we can kind of get past some of the walls that our brain has up for getting into that subconscious space for people. And so it's definitely a tool. People get really scared of it, I think, because it's called programming, right? Neuro-linguistic programming. I did an interview once with, Anna Breeze. She's a big reporter overseas, and she wouldn't talk about it. She was too scared to talk about NLP with me because it was neuro-linguistic programming. So for people who are at home, just know, like, you, no matter what you do, language is programming you 100% of the time. It's programming you. We have all these programs, and learning how the program works is not going to program you more. It allows you to retrain yourself. So I love that you're talking about that. And it seems like that's a big part of what you do is help women with language and connecting all of that and with the feminine. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I really have taken all these little pieces of my own journey and kind of meshed them together to be able to help women in their journey wherever they are. So I help women a lot of times, like with their confidence. It's so interesting to me because I work with a lot of very high achieving driven women. It's interesting to me, you know, they have all these things that they've done, yet they still don't feel confident. They're still shrinking. They're still making themselves small because they forget who they are. I have this whole method where I help them remember. I call it remembering like your badassery. Remembering like when you were like 7 and you did something you were really proud of, you were just proud of it. Like you didn't question it. You just like owned it. But then as we grow up, we kind of question and we doubt and we're like, oh, well, that thing didn't really matter. And so what I find is going on for a lot of women is they're going through their day and they're thinking of who they are in the moment with all the things on their plate, with all the things going on in their minds, but they forget the like, for instance, I know this client wouldn't care. She was on a rowing team in college and they freaking dominated this match. I don't know what you call them, match, race, whatever. And she had forgotten that, but I walked her through this process of helping her remember that and feeling that confidence again. And like, I do things with like anchors on your body so that you can like pull that up. Even before this interview, like I have a little pregame session that I do where I pull up my anchors, and I'm constantly adding to those references so that anytime that I have like a win, a good thing, I'm adding to that inventory. So I know how to access those great feelings. That's what NLP is all about. So that's how I use it a lot to help women feel better.
So when you say anchors, what you mean is like core memories or core experiences that remind us like who we really are.
Yeah. And what I mean by an anchor is like I literally help them create a biophysical marker on their body. For me, it's like squeezing your wrist. Like I have a whole process that like we go through and we find some of these things that you haven't thought about in years. And it is amazing to watch their faces. Like they're coming in, they're feeling self-doubt about something. And then I get them to remember something that was already there. Like I'm not creating anything for them. They had it in them already, but they forgot. Our brain does this when we're going through a hard time or just in life. It's trained to look for the negative. And if you don't like consciously make it look for the positive, well, it's not going to, because it's looking to avoid problems and look for advantages. Like it doesn't want to feel pain. And so to do that, unfortunately, it focuses on the negative unless you know how to train it otherwise. So I help them create like a biophysical marker that they can use. Like say they're walking into a big meeting or they're nervous about something. They can just like squeeze their wrist and then they feel that badassery again. They're like, oh yeah, that's who I am. Like bringing that dominate energy rather than like the scared little girl that's not sure what's on the other side energy, which is what most of us do if we don't know any better.
Yeah, I think that's so beautiful and really important. I love the physical aspect. Kaylee, she does a ton of the somatic work and we talk about it a lot in the school. And so I love hearing this idea that, no, it's not just a mind thing, right? Mm-hmm. It's not just the mind. It's not just what you're saying. It's actually physical in your body, and creating that biomarker in your body can help you to remember who you really are.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I do want to ask for you, because in your story, you talked about, oh, I was so in my masculine. And we obviously have talked about what the feminine is on this podcast, but I would love to hear your take on what it means to be in your masculine versus what it means to be in your feminine.
Yes. So for me, that looked like really like always looking for where I can control things, like really needing to be the one that decides like how the kids are fed or how they're put to bed, or like all these little things that I would get very bothered if my husband didn't do it my way. Like I wore the pants in the relationship, and like people would say that about me. But knowing like I also grew up with a mother who wore the pants, and I had a very passive father. And so what did I do? Well, I found a man just like my dad because I love and respect him. So I found someone just like him, and I'm very much like my mom. And so I would be very heavily in like go, 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 do, do, do. Didn't like to rest a whole lot. Like knew that I should, knew that it was good for me, but fighting almost this like internal thing where it's like, I don't feel like I can allow myself to rest. Like I didn't earn it. I'm not good enough to rest. The work isn't done, especially being a mom of 4 young kids. It's like, no, the work is never freaking done. But I also didn't have any models of that. And so I didn't know, like, I didn't grow up seeing women slow down, seeing women enjoy things. And I have plenty of things that I enjoy in my life. Like, I don't want to make it sound like I never enjoyed my life through the process. Yet there was just like this constant need to just like prove myself almost. Like I'm worthy only if I produce, only if I do these things. I'm also a youngest child of 7 kids. So that had a lot to play into it too, of like, I want to be taken seriously. But then that came into like, I'm always too serious. Like I have a lot of fun. But then if I have too much fun, well, then I'm not serious enough to sit at the big kid table. Because I was put at the kid table forever, and I wanted to be at the adult table. And so that just went through my life a whole lot. So being in the masculine, like really butting heads with my husband, because there were times where he was more masculine too. He would want to make decisions, but I'm like, no, it's my way. Like, this is why it needs to happen this way. And he just wasn't willing to fight. So I would win, which isn't really what I wanted. Like I wanted him to decide things, but he didn't know how to step into that role because I kept taking it. I didn't give him space.
Well, and I have been thinking about this concept so much recently. This like women really want men to fight for them Like I don't care who you are. I do not care how masculine you are or how much you say that, like, yes, you are the achiever. Every woman wants a man to fight for them. Everyone wants someone to fight for them because they're worthwhile, and their worth is it's not that your worth is tied to that, but it's just a way in your relationship to know, right? Like, I'm worth fighting for, right?
Yeah.
What you know, but we keep doing this thing where instead of letting our husbands fight for us, we fight them instead. Like, we just fight them on it. And like you were talking about, like, we take over and we show them, like, yes, I'm just as smart and fast and strong. Like, we still have,
Right.
I was a tomboy growing up. I'm guessing maybe you were too. And no,
Somewhat.
not as much.
Not as much. No, I did get into the girly things for sure.
Yeah. And for me, it was very much about, like, I'm as smart and strong as you are, right? Like, I'm as big. And for you, it sounds like it was, take me seriously. I'm an adult. I'm number 5 out of 8 kids. So I totally feel you. My whole life, I've been like, look, I'm so responsible, you know? And now I really am the responsible one in my family. Not that everyone else in my family isn't responsible.
Right.
They are. But I have, like, become the go-to human in my family. And now I'm like, oh no, what did I do? Like, what did I do in my life? But we all, as women, I think so many women can resonate with what you're saying, right? Especially so many of us are high achievers, right? We want to show that we're high achievers, and we struggle with this in our marriages because we're afraid, like you were saying, to play. We're afraid to let go. We're afraid to let other people help us and take care of us. And we always have to be the one helping the other person and taking care and, like, showing, like, we are great. We're great on our own, you know? If we're great on our own, if we're so, you know, independent, then how do we let somebody else, how do we let our spouses really, or just even if someone's not married, how do you let someone else into your life? How do you have intimate relationships without letting go?
Right. Yeah. Surrender, which is like the hardest thing. That was one of the hardest things for me to learn how to do. It still comes up too. Like, my old patterns, like talking about patterns earlier, like, I have 30 plus years of living a certain way. And so old patterns do come up, but now I know how to deal with them. Like, now I recognize, like, hey, this is old pattern. I don't need to be this way. It's going to be all right. So yeah, totally a thing.
Yeah, for sure. And I would love to hear how this journey led you more into your body. Like, the somatics piece, how did this come in? How did that help heal, like, your relationship, and what was that healing journey like for you?
Yeah, so it was really when I started that course with the sex and relationship coach, a lot of it was like diving very deep into the vulnerable parts of you. You know, I grew up in a very conservative Christian home, and anything with my body, we didn't talk about it. We didn't really, all I knew about sex and sexuality was, don't do it. Like, it's not for you until marriage. And then, like, don't touch yourself, don't arouse yourself. Like, those are bad things. Don't go there. And so I was almost like afraid of my body. Even like coming into my body as a teenager, just felt wrong. Like, my body was a problem. I was responsible for other people's thoughts. And, you know, what I wear is causing someone else to sin. Like, really messy, gross things that I just do not subscribe to anymore. And I don't teach my daughters. I don't teach my sons, and I don't teach my daughters that. I'm like, we're throwing that away because it was really harmful to me. They were all well-meaning people that taught me those things. You know, they didn't know what it was going to do. But I had a lot wrapped up in that. And so through the process of going in this course and having to, like, touch myself, like, very literally, like, work through different blocks I had sexually, that's where I started to learn how disconnected and dissociated I was from my body. I was like, oh, I have this body. Like, at that point, I was eating really well. I worked out. I was training. I'd done a lot of different things, and that was a normal part of me, but I still was so dissociated. I like to say it like, how many times do you look in the mirror in a day? But, like, when was the last time you actually looked at yourself and, like, saw who was truly on the other side? Like, I didn't really see who I was until I started going into this course. And so that looked like learning to sit with myself and, like, be okay being there. Learning to feel sensation in my body and be okay with it. Learning to even, like, allow it to exist for my own self and not just in this little box of what was okay.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And it's something that we don't often do, right? So many people, and it's so funny because you talk about, eating well, doing all the things. And so many women are into health, right? We get into
Mm-hmm.
health, but we actually don't even connect with our bodies, right? Like we don't love them. We are so rude to them all the time.
Yeah.
We hate on them and we don't like to feel sensation in them. We don't know
Mm-hmm.
how to feel
Right.
sensation in them, how to sit and sensate. And so I think that's beautiful that this sexuality course really was helping you with that piece. And so, how now, like, I would love to know more about that and about
Mm-hmm.
that piece and how the sexuality piece helped you like heal in your marriage or like, how can women do this? What's important? What have you taken away? All of the things.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I teach inside my courses, and even that's going to be in some of the other things that I have coming up, is this time to connect with self, of learning how to feel, like learning how to let your emotions just exist, to process them. And so, I have a practice now that I don't even remember necessarily where I adopted it. I didn't get it from that course, I got it somewhere else. I don't remember where. But of like actually putting my hands on my vessel, which seemed, when I first thought of the idea, I was like, well, that's silly. Why does that matter? Like, why connect to me? But there's something almost sacred about the feeling of like feeling yourself and, feeling what sensations are arising and allowing them to exist. Again, this goes back to my childhood of like emotions were bad. Like I was a pretty explosive child. I had some explosive siblings and it wasn't okay for me to feel. It wasn't okay for me to have emotions. So I learned how to like stuff them deep down. And through this process of learning that I could be safe in my own body, I started allowing my emotions to come out. I started allowing myself to process through them and to feel those sensations. And so it looks like that practice. It looks like loving kindness, like when I'm getting dressed in the mirror, like admiring my body for what it can do, admiring what I do have, like acknowledging like, hey, my legs carry me through my day and help me lift heavy weights because I really love to lift heavy weights. Like they allow me to love on the people that I love because they carry me. And finding everything right with my body instead of what's wrong. There's still some parts of me that are hard for me to love. After having twins, I have like a big abdominal separation that I'm still working on. I've had pelvic floor dysfunction, all these things, but recognizing you're never going to get yourself to the place of loving your body and your body being on the same team with you if you're doing it from a place of hate. If you're doing it from a place of like, I don't love you, I'm going to find everything wrong with you. Like that wouldn't work if you were attempting to assist someone in something and all you were doing is pointing out all the things that they weren't doing correctly. Like, how successful would it be? Number one, they would like walk away from you and be like, I never want to talk to you again. Please don't. And they would be in this terrible place where all they're thinking of is everything wrong. And so it's the same thing with our bodies. So cultivating kindness, cultivating like, what is right? How can we be kind? And I used to think it was so froofy and so just not my thing because I am a very serious, a very, logical thing, and it was just so out there woo woo for me. And it's like the more that I've learned about myself, the more that I've gone inward and done that inner work, the more that I've seen like, hey, there is value in this. But it took my journey to get there. Like someone could have told me to do that, but I wasn't going to get it until I got it.
Hey friends, it's Julie. I'm just popping in here real quick to tell you about a very special invitation we have for you. If you have been feeling deeply called to learn more about your feminine identity or to see what feminine power really is, or you're just loving the podcast, then Kaylee and I would love to invite you to join our community, Feminine Alchemist. Inside, we host live monthly women's circles, challenges, and Wheel of the Year celebrations. They are seriously so much fun. We have monthly workshops where we bring in experts to teach on anything from menstruation to mythology. You'll also get access to our library of courses about astrology, intuition techniques, sacred embodiment, and cyclical living. And most importantly, you'll be able to connect with women who are like-hearted and walking the same path as you. So if this sounds exciting to you, Join today by clicking the link in the show notes or going to femininealchemist.com. That's alchemist spelled MYST. Okay, back to the episode. Yeah, and I think that physical piece can be so helpful with that, with someone who's really pragmatic. Like when you're talking, I'm like, I see the Aries, I see the Capricorn, it's all there. But I think there are a lot of people who will jive with that because a lot of people are scared of the woo-woo because they think like it takes you out of your body. It's not practical. It's not science-based. It's, like you said, it's frou-frou, it's silly. Or sometimes we have this rejection because we, that I can't describe any other way, is like, ugh, yuck. Like, oh, yuck. Like, I don't want to be like those people, over there, like those silly people. But the truth is it's not silly. It's actually not. It's not silly. And it is it's like the most practical, pragmatic thing you could do is actually like tucking into your body, like be in your actual physical form and being. And I've talked about this multiple times on this show, but I'm still in the thick of it, everybody. So here we go. I have been doing this practice for 60 days where I will sit naked in front of the mirror and like thank my body. And I will tell all the different parts of my body, thank you. I will tell my body that I love it just the way that it is. And it has been incredibly like nourishing and transformative, literally like from day one, transformation, and I am running up against still these expectations like you were talking about. Like I'm still holding expectations for my body that it's so hard to let go of those. But we all have these expectations like, okay, now body change,
Yep.
Like, oh, I loved you, body change, or like these expectations that my body must be a different way, and to be lovable or to be perfect. And I think just like you, I think it's a Capricorn moon thing, but it's this churning underneath that if I let go, if I stop trying to change my body, it will never change. And my body will become this giant fat blob, or it'll still be ugly, or it will still be all these awful things if I don't do anything to it. If I don't make her do something, what's going to happen? And so what do you do with people like me?
The first thing that was coming to my mind around that is the idea of ownership. So I am someone who believes so heavily in radical responsibility. And I think the mark of the difference between a woman and a girl is a woman owns what's happening in her life. She owns what she's got. Whether that's like she owns her body as she moves through the world, or she owns the challenges that have come into her life. I see it as like, you aren't responsible for what happened to you, though you are responsible to take the next steps, to work through it, to do something, instead of being a victim of your life. And I'm not in any way calling you a victim or anyone else that's in this place saying you're a victim. Though when you take ownership and you say, okay, this is the body that I have in this current state, am I going to accept it fully as it is and own it? Or am I going to accept it fully as it is and lovingly do something about it? Like I see it as two things. Like if you're feeling like you've got extra pounds or fluff or whatever the heck you want to call it, I don't know what it is for you, but like where are you at with that? Like, because there's a place where you can love it and you can accept it, and that can be okay, and that can be enough. And then there's also this place where it's okay to want your body to be its strongest. It really comes down to intention. It really comes down to, am I doing this because I hate my body and I don't like the way that it looks and I'm going for this surface level BS? Or am I doing it because, hey, I actually am into health. I understand longevity. Like I want strong bones. I want to live a long life. Like I'm doing this for my old lady body. Like I say that all the time. Like I'm lifting weights for my old lady body because I've seen where my grandmother is now. I see even where my mom is now. And I see how muscle mass just falls off of us if you don't cultivate a good practice of weightlifting. And so I'm doing it for those reasons because I love myself enough to, not because I hate myself so I have to. Does that help?
Yeah, it makes complete sense. And I think part of what I'm talking about in this exercise and these expectations is I'm trying to get myself to the place that even if nothing happened to my body, even if it didn't change, even if I, lifted all the weights and it never changed,
Mm.
that I still loved it,
Yeah.
right? That I would love it, that ownership part, because yeah, I think like many women, and that's not to say so there are a couple things. Like, one, you can get in the freeze state where you're like, I'm just so overwhelmed with my body, I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to do anything with it, and I won't do anything, and I refuse to do anything. You can also get into this state of like fighting, fight. And I feel like I am always so many women are fighting our bodies, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's like the checklist, like, I'm eating really well, I'm only eating whole foods, I'm not eating processed, I'm doing all the things, and I'm working out so hard, and I'm, all those things. And where we're just banging our heads against the wall still, like beating ourselves up still, even where if we're doing all the things, we keep fighting our body and fighting our body instead of loving our body into these things. So I think that is like part of my goal, is to not fight my body anymore, but to like really love it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And something came to mind while you were talking, um, going to the subconscious, the NLP side of like, what are the stories that you are subconsciously telling yourself? What is your identity around your body? Like, do you even believe that you can have the body that you want to have? Like, what is the energy that you're bringing to it? What are those things? And that's where I feel like a lot of things, they are on a deeper subconscious level. You say your affirmations, you do whatever. You can do all that work, and it's beautiful and wonderful. I think it's very, very important. It's also important to address the side that of the subconscious level of like, hey, I've identified myself as this for so long. Am I okay to let go of that identity for a new identity? And that can be scary for a lot of people. And so they don't even realize that they're fighting that's deeper than just this surface. And I don't want to call it surface level, because it's not, to do mirror work. And I've done work like that, but with my yoni, which is incredibly vulnerable, to actually like, oh, now I have to look at this really like private, vulnerable part of me, and I have to love it. I have to trust it. Like, whoa, I didn't know I was going to go there. So I see, and I hear what you're saying around that. It is a challenge to go through something like that.
Oh no, and yeah, it totally is, and I totally see what you're saying, talking about too. And I think you can pair these works, which is what I think you're saying too, is pairing the mirror work with the subconscious work, right? And do you know about EFT,
I
emotional
do.
freedom technique? Yeah, tapping, because I
Yeah.
do tapping and tap through those things. And yeah, the subconscious work is so important. And when I started doing this work, I started I've done a ton of belief work. I still have so much to do, but I've done a ton of belief work in the beginning. And in the beginning, when I was doing this, I realized I had this belief, and I think people might be blown away that they have this belief, because people are like, no, I don't have this belief. But I had this inner belief, and I think I still have it somewhere. Like, I'm still working through it, that the part of the reason I need my body to be heavy is so that everyone knows I'm going through hard things. And so that I'm
Mm.
carrying something, I can show people that I'm carrying something heavy, right? Like that it's heavy, that look how hard I'm working. Like, look how, and it's like my subconscious and like my soul screaming at me, right? To be like, put
Mm-hmm.
down all the heavy things, like stop holding all the heavy things. But I think as women, we're very prone to like hold the heavy things, and we do it in different ways, right?
Yep.
Some people do it the opposite way, where they're starving themselves, so and they're making themselves thinner and thinner to look like, that maybe the subconscious belief might be something like, I don't deserve to exist, right? Or I don't
Mm-hmm.
deserve to take up space, or I don't deserve to be here. And so it can run all ends of the spectrum. And I am someone who strongly believes that your body is trying to send you the messages, right? Like, it's trying to tell
Yes.
you what it needs, and
Mm-hmm.
digging into that subconscious piece is so important. So how do you help women dig into their beliefs?
Well, first, I really like to kind of talk around their beliefs and find out like, what is your belief around your belief? Just the way that the subconscious mind works, it's always going to give a smoke screen. Like, it's going to say the BS answer to get you off its back. So, you start a conversation, you say, okay, well, what do you believe around that? Or like, why do you think this is coming up? Or what's going on around that? And you get the thing, the smoke screen that get you off my back. And the way that I've worked clients through this before is keep asking, keep questioning, because at some level, you'll find what I call it like a chink in the armor or a nick in the armor, because your subconscious mind is an armor. It's keeping you safe for whatever reason. Those beliefs, you have them because your subconscious mind believes that they're serving you in some way. And so to find like the one little nick in the armor, like I had this with the client one time where she said something that directly contradicted. She didn't even realize she did it. And I'm like, wait, you just said this, but then you said this. So what one's true? And she like had this, I even saw in her face, which was really cool when you do this like subconscious work. It's like you see the little like twitch in the brain and the subconscious to be like, wait, what, like, what do we believe? It's almost like a glitch in your computer that like the code had an error in it. So going into it deeper to really like dig more, because knowing that like the first few things that come up are not really the thing most of the time, asking them deeper around that. And then I have different processes. I use all sorts of different techniques, whatever. I'm very intuitive in it. Like I don't have like a prescribed like, oh, well, these are the 5 steps to fix this thing. It's like, okay, whatever comes up, like I'm watching their body language. I'm listening to their tone. I'm seeing what their eyes are doing. I'm seeing all these different things so I can say, okay, got it. Like there was the thing that didn't quite add up. I'm going to ask them about it. And then we're going to go there and see what we can do from there.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And it's really helpful to have someone to mirror back to you, right? Like it's so helpful to have somebody else because you can do so much of this work by yourself. It's not like it's impossible to do. And many of us try, but it is so helpful to have someone who can mirror and be there for you. And just like in your journey, right, having that holistic sex coach to help you with that piece. And so digging into that more, right, because you talked about doing the work of looking at your vulva in the mirror, looking and seeing what it looks like. I would love to know like how for women, unpacking sexuality is such a big thing. There's so much intensity around this. And I'll just be totally upfront and vulnerable. And we kind of talked about this before the show, but like I'm one of those 25%. Like I'm one of the 1 in 4 women who's been abused. And I have suffered sexual abuse multiple times in my life. And I think that that's common for many women to have suffered it. Once you've suffered it once, sometimes it comes back around, right? And just that can make, for a while in the beginning of my marriage, I was reactive. I definitely was. I did have some major reactions. Didn't happen all the time, but I definitely, as I was learning, because we actually were very proactive learning about sex. We read a book together. My parents were both like, my dad sat us down and was like, listen, you're going to need a towel. Like he like told my husband, like, listen, you're always going to want to finish before her, but don't, like, you make sure that she orgasms, right? So he did a good job in this space. And my mom is a nurse. So she always was like, this is just your anatomy. All right, get over it. Like penis, vulva, right? We always say vagina, but your vagina is just one part of your vulva. It's not your whole, just so people know that like you have a whole set, right? You've got labia, you've got all the kinds of things down there. It's called vulva. And so we were pretty well prepared, but I was not prepared in the sense of, there are just some things that no one's ever going to tell you, like the flip of the switch, like that men, like after they orgasm, they're like, okay, let's go outside now, okay, let's go do something else. Like, right. The brain switches, unless they're like, let's go to sleep. It's either like, okay, now I want to go to sleep, or like for my husband, because he's such a workaholic, he has an Aries moon and he's like, so like, like, let's get it done. He was like, okay, now I got to go back to work. See ya, And I'd be like, yeah, dare you, And I would have these very physical reactions around that. We went to counseling together and that was helpful. But even years later, right, 9 years later, here we are. And I've been doing such a healing journey around sexuality, but I know even like me and other women are like, I do not even know where to start, right? I do not know where to start. And we've addressed on this podcast before a couple things, like sometimes how women shut down their orgasm because they're afraid of it. And that's something we can definitely dive into if you want to dive into it, because I think it's worth saying multiple times and helping women through that. So it's not like we've never talked about some of these things, but I think it's time we like unravel some of this stuff. And so how does someone, even if you haven't suffered abuse, I'm sure there's always going to be some hang-ups around sex. Even if you were not someone who waited till marriage or you never were told that, I promise you there's always something in there. There's always healing work to be done around this, just because of the way our society is and structured, and because we're just not good at teaching people how to have sex. We're very bad at that. We're so bad at it, you know? So where would someone start in this healing journey? Like, what do you do?
Yeah. One of my recommendations is to really decide, like, what do you believe? Like, what were you preconditioned to believe? Write that all out. I have different journaling prompts for those things, but writing out, what do I believe? What do I want to believe? And then almost going through like this ceremony of like, okay, I'm going to rip the page and I'm going to tear it up or burn it, like burn those old beliefs and set yourself free. And really, I think backing up to that is you have to have a desire and you have to be okay stepping into this vulnerable place, because this is probably one of the most vulnerable areas that a woman can really start to dig into is her sexuality, because we're told through, just like what you were saying, of society and different experiences, how we should be around it. And, you know, we're told this idea that, well, women are not as sexual as men. This is a man's thing and you just do it. It's very obligatory for a lot of women. And so it's this thing that, like, you're exactly right. We're really, really bad at talking about it. We're really bad at teaching people how to do it. And if you do have things, unfortunately, movies, TV, media, everything shows us like all the wrong things about it. And then it's like, just like what you said, the towel, that made me chuckle, because it's like, yeah, nobody tells you. It's just like being a mom. Nobody tells you like all these things, like you're going to be leaking all over from every orifice. Like, sex also has these things that nobody really talks about, that like there's an awkward part. There are weird parts. There are funny parts. There are really uncomfortable parts, and everything in between. But all we see is this, oh, it's beautiful, it's wonderful, you should do it in these circumstances only ever. And so really digging into, what are your beliefs around it? What do you want to believe? What is serving you? What is not serving you? Picking up some books around sexuality and really allowing yourself to experience, as far as like somatically, this is where the two can go together very well, is if you want to get curious, is allowing yourself to explore your own self. And I know that can be very controversial for a lot of people, especially in Christian communities. I don't ascribe to what I used to ascribe to anymore, because I've recognized that my denial of understanding that I am a being that has pleasure and that's okay led me down a really ugly path in my sex life with my husband, because I didn't really, it was like, it was all for him. I didn't really let myself enjoy it as much. It was like, sure, it was enjoyable to a point, but doing this deeper work, I've experienced things that I didn't even know were possible. I'm like, oh, wow, women can have like pretty much an infinity of orgasms. Like, we can never be done. And that's amazing. And there are orgasms that I didn't even know existed, like cervical orgasms. And I was like, wait, what? I didn't know that that was a thing. So getting curious and having the desire, and it can be scary for a lot of people. So it's deciding, you know, do you really want to go into this work, or is okay? I have a mentor that says this phrase, and everybody will understand it. If you listen to me very closely, you'll understand I did a little NLP theme there. Anyway, so it's okay as long as okay is okay. But as soon as okay is not okay, okay is not okay anymore. So it's you deciding, is okay? And if okay is okay, then fine. But if okay is not okay, then you got to do something about it. You gotta look. So yeah, that's kind of where I would start. Just like, what are your beliefs? What do you want to believe? And then are you going to allow yourself to get curious?
Yeah, I think that's really big. And I do think so many women, because I suffered with this also, this idea that, oh, my sex drive's just lower, which in reality, I mean, there's two pieces of this, right? So for me, before I got married, it was like sex drives high, sky high, so exciting. After getting married, well, really it was pregnancy, right? And I think this happens to a lot of women. You get pregnant and then you're like, your hormones just go and they never recover, right? For me, that was the case. Like I didn't, and some women love sex during pregnancy and it's heightened for them. And I think that can definitely be the case. But I do think a lot of women, like their drive just crashes into the ground. And after the pregnancy, lots of times it never comes all the way back up. It never, and part of that is a hormone thing. And like working with what are we eating? What are we putting into our bodies? What are we putting on our bodies? All those kinds of things are important. But I would say that a lot of women who feel like they don't actually have a sex drive, it's not necessarily a physical. It's not because of the physical. It's, as far as hormones, like it's not hormonal. It's nothing is wrong with your body. It's all in your head. It's all in the mind. And it's this idea that, not only these ideas about like sex being wrong and bad, or, maybe ideas like you said, it's just for men or it's just for my husband and I have to pleasure him and please him. It's about this thing that we do where we smother it. We smother our own drive. We don't believe it's possible. Now, part of this, I do think, is the education piece. Because it's hard if like your husband's like comes in 1 minute and doesn't help you out, right? Like that's a whole other conversation. But actually opening up and having these conversations is so, so important. And I'm just curious, like, do you have any recommendation for women who feel like they don't have a drive? And also any recommendations of like, how do you talk to your partner about this?
Yes. So it's so funny that you say it's all in your head, because before I got into the course, I was reading this book that was all about like cycle syncing and what your hormones are doing at different times in your cycle and how you should eat and work out around all these things. I was 1000% convinced that I had an estrogen problem. Like 100%. I was like, oh my gosh, I have an estrogen problem. And it just like gave me all the validation that I needed. I'm like, oh, it's just my hormones, whatever. And then I start this course and I realized I didn't have a fucking estrogen problem. Oh, I'm sorry if I can't say that word here. I didn't have an estrogen problem. I had a belief problem. I had a problem of like, oh, I actually can be sexual and this can feel good and this is for me. A lot of that was different blocks, like working through emotional blocks. I said, the beliefs, but there are a lot of blocks that we have, whether it's religious blocks, children, sexual abuse, pregnancy, how you view your body. Because our bodies change so much. I've had 4 kids and I had twins, and holy moly, my body has been through the ringer. And so to even allow myself to think that I could still be attractive, or think that I could still, in this, like I said before, like oozing from every orifice as a new mom, you quite literally are. And if you've had a C-section, like also just everything going on there, like your body has been through the ringer. And how are you supposed to like take it all back and do something with it? I'm supposed to be like this sexual goddess, of this, all these ideas that we have of how we're supposed to be. So working through those blocks, there's also a practice that I teach my clients, and then I do in my real life, of clearing the glass. And I love this. I'm going to keep it forever, that I learned from the course of, if you imagine between you and your partner, you're in like this massive auditorium, but you're about 25 yards apart from each other. And there's this giant pane of glass, like floor to ceiling, between the two of you. And every little argument, every frustration, every hard thing, like is a piece of mud just slinged on the glass. And I've been married for 15 years. So man, there's been a lot of mud on that glass of just like challenges with our kids and things that, well, he didn't do this and I didn't do that. And like messy AF on that glass. And it's only through sitting with that and choosing to clear that glass to really see the other person on the other side, not see all the things that are in the way, not see all the the hurt and the things that are there, but to see him on the other side and to recognize like, oh, that is the person that I fell in love with. And you can do this for yourself too. I do this for myself of like, what is my own glass that's keeping me from my sexuality? And that's what I teach my clients is to imagine like all those beliefs or different experiences, those are all glass. And I have a visualization that I put them through of them really going through the glass. And that's something that you do on a pretty regular basis. This isn't just like a one and done thing. This is like a clean as you go policy in your life. Like, hey, something came up, like we need to clear the glass. Like my husband and I just did that the other day. And I do it with myself. I'll be like, hey, I'm really not showing up as the person I want to show up as. I probably have something I need to look at where I'm not being congruent. I'm not being who I want to be. And what's that glass that I need to clear within myself? So working through the blocks, cleaning the glass, like getting to the heart of like who I am as a person, who he is, and what do we really want this to look like?
Yeah, that's super, super helpful because I do think it's such a, if you don't clear the glass, you're just going to be in your head the whole time. Like how many times have we sat there trying to get into sex and being like, I'm thinking about a million other things in my brain right now. I cannot think about you or what you're doing or
right.
And then like even it becomes annoying, right? Because we get to this point where we feel, something about them like it's annoying that they're kissing us. Stop kissing us, like stop doing this,
Yes.
Stop doing these things. Like this isn't good. And we also sometimes we don't have a language to describe or we're too scared to say like that doesn't feel good, that does feel good, or it's very scary territory for us to say, especially if you've been doing something in your marriage for a long time and you have a routine and like the whole time you've been like, I hate the thing that you do, like
yes,
it's so hard to say, like these things. And how do you say them?
Yeah, that is one thing we learned through the course and that we've adopted is a policy of radical honesty, which is really hard, really, really hard because there was a point in our marriage where like I really hated my husband. I know I was supposed to love him. I loved him deep down, but like I hated him. I couldn't look at him. I didn't want anything to do with him. I told him that. And that's hard. You have to be willing to go there, I think, to really have this open, beautiful sex life that you want to have. Then you have to be willing to say the hard thing. You have to be willing to open up. And that can be really, really vulnerable and scary for a lot of people. It was for me. It was really hard. And so also like having the courage to even have the conversation, not from a place of, hey, things aren't working. Like say you don't have big trouble, big, hard things that you're working through in your marriage, but you just want to explore things. You want things to be a little bit different. Approaching it from a way, and this is where communication comes in too, is communication is not the meaning of what you say, it's how what you said was understood. So it doesn't matter if you intended the right words, but if they came off in the wrong way, well, then that person felt what they felt because they took your words through their system, their map of reality. And so having open communication to say, what we're doing right now is great. And I would love to explore this. Are you willing to? I love the phrase, are you willing to? Or would you be willing to? Would you be willing to get a little curious with me in this area? I think that's a way to open a conversation that's not accusatory. It's not saying what you're doing isn't pleasing me. It's not saying it's not okay. It's just like a, hey, I'm curious. Would you go down this path with me? And having it be kind of a no pressure way, because I think that is a challenge for a lot of people. For us, it was like we were in a place where this was like a freaking ultimatum, and it was like, this is either working or we're separating. Like that is the place where we were at. And so I have a different situation. Unfortunately, we had gotten to that point. So we have a different situation than someone who's like just knowing that there's maybe more out there that they aren't experiencing yet. But so that's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that's really great. And if you are sometimes it's so hard to say something in the moment. That's really something we have to build up. Like we have to start practicing from a small place of saying something in the moment, because I think that's part of the reason it's so hard for women to, say like, this is not pleasurable for me. I don't like it when you do this, because we're not used to being able to say something in the moment. We're really afraid of confrontation in that way. And if you are having trouble with that, I love this conversation of, are you willing? And maybe talk to them after. Maybe it's easier for you to talk to them after in a different setting when you feel safe. But I think, building intimacy and safety with your partner is really important to be able to say no. And sometimes it feels just like it's the wrong time. It's the wrong time.
Right.
And I can't, this is not the state. I'm not in a state where I can say that. And that's totally fine. But you can take these conversations in other places and ask them in ways that are, helpful. And I think some women, when you say oh, I'm curious about this, I think a lot of women are I don't even know what to be curious about. I don't even know what exists outside of this world that I'm in. And I'm not so sure about where to go to look because we talked about this a little bit before the show, but because, pornography is really pervasive. And I know lots of different people have lots of different thoughts on pornography. I will say in my experience and the experience of so many women, it is devastating. It's absolutely devastating to the marriage. I know so many people advocate for it can be great for both of you and it can be so wonderful. That just has not been my experience. And I don't know that that's actually supported in the scientific literature nearly as much as the deterioration of your relationships and safety is supported. Everyone can have their own thoughts, but I would say, this can be devastating. And I don't know, do you want to share some of your thoughts on that as well?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I'm with you, especially after going through this work and really seeing one of the big pillars through the work that we did too is conscious monogamy, which is really being in it and not needing external sources. One of the big hallmarks that I worked myself through was being able to be turned on for myself, not needing external. And that goes all into feminine energy and experiencing pleasure, surrender, all of those things. But back to the pornography piece is, it's said to be, oh, well, it can help you. It can help you understand these things, or it can help you get more in the mood, whatever. It can be an enhancement. I don't think that you need that. I don't think that you need to read 50 Shades of Grey or watch a movie or any of those things, or even the deeper, darker side of porn to have a really juicy, amazing sex life. And in my experience, so we talked a little bit about this before, but my husband was viewing pornography, and I knew, but I didn't know, if that makes sense. I knew before we got married that he had a problem with it in the past. And he had said, it's not an issue anymore. And so I was very trusting and I believed him. And then years go by and we had a very, I don't want to say broken marriage in the beginning, but we had kids pretty fast. We had kids fast, then we had a lot of kids. And when you have a lot of kids really fast, there's not really a whole lot of time to be with one another. And we were in this stage in life where he was working 12-hour days, 10 to 12-hour days, and I was just survival mode, totally. And so when he would come home, I would check out of being a mom, and he would do bedtime, especially after I was done nursing. I was like, I'm freaking not doing bedtime ever again because I'm so touched out. Everybody has touched me all day. And I nursed all my kids. I nursed my twins until they were 2, which was a whole freaking thing. Felt like a dairy cow, a whole, all these identity things going on in my mind. And our relationship early on, we didn't go to bed together. We didn't spend a whole lot of time together. He had other things that he worked through too, of video games that he really was tied to. And oh my gosh, it goes deep, of all the different ways that I felt very hurt from actions he was taking. And so years and years went by. I kind of knew that this could be a thing in the background that he could be doing, but I didn't ever want to confront it. It's talk about being in the masculine and ignoring the feminine. My intuition was screaming at me for years to ask the question that I never had the courage to ask, because it was scary. Because if I asked the question, I would have to actually confront what the answer was going to be, even though I knew deep in my soul, and I know every woman has experienced this deep knowing before. Whether or not you allow yourself to feel it on a regular basis, that's a whole other story. But that deep knowing of that gut feeling of like, if this is going on or has gone on, and I just knew it and I didn't want to ask him until one day I just did. Until one day I'm like, I finally think I'm courageous enough to get the answer that I know I don't want to get, that I know is coming. And I unfortunately caught him in I was very manipulative in how I did this. And because I was acting out of a lot of hurt, I set him up to be caught. And I confronted him and I said exactly that. I'm going to ask you a question that I don't really want the answer to, but I need the answer. And I was shattered when I got the answer, even though I knew, like, actually hearing it was so devastating, because I was like, oh, wow, everything that I made it mean to me, that's really where the hurt came in more. It wasn't that like he didn't love me and he was doing all these things. It was like everything that I made it mean about my identity of like, I'm not enough. I'm not pretty enough. You're always going to compare me to that. Just like everything that flooded my mind. And I was completely broken and jarred in the biggest way that like I couldn't even look him in the eye. Luckily, because I had already been through NLP training and knowing things, like I was able to hold space for the whole thing in a much different way. I think had I not gone through my journey of learning things, I wouldn't be where I am today. We probably would have separated, because I don't think we could have worked through it without the tools that we had. And it was really messy and ugly for a long time. That was about a year before we did the sex and relationship coaching. So that was a huge deal to me. And, I looked all over for resources, and some was helpful, some was not. But I felt so much shame. Like what he chose to do had something to do with me. Like he only did it because of me. So I took on all this external shame. I didn't want to talk about it. Number one, for his own protection of like, it's not my dirty laundry to air. And this is actually the first time I'm really talking about it publicly. But earlier this year, I'll say about a month ago, I'm in the process of building a retreat. And a woman that's one of the collaborators in my retreat, we were talking, and I was like, I just had it come to my heart. I was like, I need to share this, because I'm like, I know I'm holding back on some things. And I think me sharing this story is really going to change a lot of, and not even necessarily, for my business, but just to show women what's possible in healing. So I went through that whole process and didn't really have a whole lot of resources. But then when we found this deeper work of sexuality, and specifically me, when I started to dig more into my own sexuality and heal those parts of me that were very broken, that I had judged, that I had, not thought of as enough, not thought of as beautiful or wonderful or any of those things, like I started to like come into myself a whole lot more. So like feminine energy and sexuality, all those things, they mean so much deeper to me because of this hurt that I've gone through. And there's so much healing that comes from going inward and doing that work and accepting those parts of you and as good enough, as whole, that I think is so, it's so undertapped. And then, we haven't even talked about like the life force energy that comes from when you tap into your sexuality and the magnetic energy that comes from that. Like when you are in this energy fully, the things that come into your life, the way that you hold yourself, all of the things that come from that. And so that's really the position that I take of helping women to tap into that for those reasons. But also it is incredibly healing, but no one really wants to have that conversation because it's really hard. It's more exciting to approach it from a like, oh, this is who I could be. I could be magnetic and confident and all those things. But really the bigger picture is that it is incredibly healing.
Yeah. And I think we should, we are going to talk about those things, like what it can bring you and the magnetism in just a second. But first, I just like want to honor you and your story, and for telling your story and choosing to tell it here, and this being the first time publicly to tell it. Thank you for being so vulnerable with us. Thank you for sharing your emotions with us. For those who can't see Shari, like tears streaming down, so touching, and I'm so grateful that you would allow that here. So I just want to say that I see you, and like we see you, and support you and all the pain that you have been through. It's so much pain, like it's so much hardship. And I know so many women who listen to this are going to just benefit because you were willing to open up and share. And I'm sure that so many women resonate so deeply with you right now.
Do you ever wish you could feel instantly grounded? Try putting a piece of the Earth's crust in your body. Yoni eggs have been used by humans for a very long time to improve energetic connection to the Earth, cleanse the chakras, and massage and tone the pelvic floor. I have been using them for a decade now, and every time I put one in, my anxiety just disappears, and it's all thanks to the energetic properties of these crystals. My biggest source of anxiety is a lack of grounding, and when I wear a yoni egg, I feel instantly grounded. And oh yes, there is definitely an improvement in other areas as well. So if you're ever curious, check it out at crunchyparadise.com. That's crunchyparadise.com, and pick up a yoni egg today.
I dated a lot in college, not to be like, "Ooh, I'm so great," but I had a lot of boyfriends. I had a lot of relationships. And every single one of them, like we're talking over 20 men, like every single one of them struggled with pornography, and it was a huge thing for them. I do want to really point out exactly what you were talking about, that in reality, it wasn't actually about you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Him doing this, and this is so hard. It's so hard to accept this, like that it's not actually about you. It's about him and his own view of himself and his own self-worth and his own biologicalness and like the way that we're built. But it can be just so, like, that's another reason I think so many women have lost their drive. They don't even want to touch sex in these ways, because like even for me, sometimes like if my husband will suggest something, I'm like, did you just see that on a porn site? Is that what, like, you saw this on this porn site and now you want me to be like your little porn star? And like, I just have this, like, the inside of me just refuses, like, I will never play that game, like I will never be like that. And I think so many women feel that, like we don't want to be like that. And not to mention, it's so hard. I did want to bring this up because there has been this rise, and like porn is great and it's good. I do want to say, like, the porn industry is inextricably linked to sex trafficking and sex slavery. And most of the women who are on there, who are doing these things, and children and everything like that, are not doing it because they really want to do it, right? Like, it's one thing is if this is really what you want to do, but most of them are not doing it because they want that. And I think all those emotions can get so interlinked with this. And, we can refuse our sexual selves because we've suffered like this, because we've suffered, and women are deeply suffering because of this. So for you, how did you learn how to accept, like, it's not about you? Because obviously you're gorgeous. Like, obviously, like, you're obviously a catch. You're obviously gorgeous. Like, you have everything, together from an outside perspective, right? Like, you've got it all. You've got it all going, right? But it can feel so deeply like scarring. I'm not enough. And that's what it screams, right? Like, they have to look at pornography because I'm not enough. I'm not enough for them. I'll never look like that. I'll never be like that. So you talked about, disentangling some of that, but how did you kind of like heal that piece of knowing you are enough?
It was a really long process. And sometimes, like I said before, of patterns, like I had something come up around Christmas time of like some crazy story, because our brain likes to tell crazy stories. So I had something come up not that long ago that really ridiculous. I won't say the details, but I'll just say that I had thought that someone could be a threat and I was comparing myself. And then come to find out, I'm like, okay, that was the most, like, I brought it up to my husband though. So a lot of the healing that I experienced came from open conversations, that radical honesty, which is so hard. I would ask him like what he preferred. Like I went there with him of finding out because I wanted to know. I wanted to know, do you want me to stand like this or be like this because of that or because you want me? And so I needed to know all the nitty gritty details, not like all of it, but even down to like the lingerie that I had. I'm like, if this is anything like what you had, like I threw stuff away because like, if this is anything like what you would watch, I don't want anything to do with it. Like I was so disgusted by it. And it took a long time of me reading different books, doing a lot of journaling, doing a lot of introspection of like untangling. Luckily, I have a very close friend who is also in the same NLP work that I would call him. He was like my therapist. I would call him like all the time. He's like a brother. And so I would reach out to him and be like, hey, I'm really struggling with this thing. So it was leaning on safe people and not being completely silent. You know I said this is my first time publicly talking about this, but I had people in my life. I had a really close friend that she took me in. I even I stayed over at her house the night that I found out. Not all night, but almost all night. But then I had gone to a place of compassion in that same night where I went home to my husband who had chosen to sleep on the basement floor. And I wasn't ready necessarily for him to touch me. I went and I gave him a hug. It was okay for me to touch him, but he couldn't touch me. I had to untangle a whole lot. And it was a process. It's very jarring, and getting the story straight and knowing what's the story in my head versus what's reality. And that's not an easy thing to do if you haven't done that before. So working with someone, whether that's a trusted mentor, a friend, reading books, and just really getting it out, allowing yourself to write down your thoughts, write down what's going on, not from a place of dwelling on it. I'm a big believer in getting things out of us so that they don't have to stay in our minds, so they don't have to swirl around and we create even more stories and crap around it. So that was really helpful for me. Community. So, but not a lot of people knew either. If any family listens to this, they'll be like, oh, I had no idea. I have one sibling that knows out of the 6, but I'm very, very close to him. So, oh, and that's my dog. He just grunted.
Oh, yeah. I think what you named, having people to talk to, community is so important. Getting it out of your being is so important, and being able to, have people to lean on, create some space, safety, and some space. And if you need a little space, it's okay if you need a little space. And it's okay to be you can't touch me, exactly what you said. I can extend affection, but I have a boundary that you cannot touch me right now. And that's okay, And it seems so, for people listening, it might seem so backwards that, what actually part of what really was healing for you was going on your own sex journey, learning, right, and taking this course about sexuality. And I would love to, you talked a little bit about the creativity part and the part how this can be enlivening. And I would love to hear a little bit more about that and how tapping in, because I think so many women who have experienced this do feel no, how could sex be healing for me when I am just hurting from it, right? For whatever reason. Maybe it's not pornography, maybe it's sexual abuse, maybe it's just one bad experience, someone saying something to you, body consciousness, whatever it is. How could sex be healing for them, and how can sex make you magnetic in those ways and creative?
Yeah, I love this topic because I've experienced it so much in my life. The more that I tap into it, the more I open into it. It's that idea of surrender too, which is huge in the feminine instead of the masculine control. Really, the feminine in sexuality is surrendering to pleasure, surrendering to the sensations and the feelings, and tapping into. There's a difference. The person I listened to, or I did the course with, talks about the difference between junk food sex and gourmet sex. And junk food sex is very much so transactional, like what you said before of rolling over, okay, next. Whereas gourmet sex is really about the full holistic experience. Like, it's about keeping that simmer alive. It's about what I said earlier of being turned on for yourself because you are a sexual being and allowing that to exist within you. And so going through this process and learning just all the different capabilities, and I still haven't even discovered the depth of what I'm capable of. A lot of that is bucking up to like my own blocks, my own beliefs around, what am I capable of? I haven't even experienced all of it yet. And that's the amazing, beautiful thing, is that there is so much available for us. And women can be, and largely are, insatiable. You think of how the romance novel industry is probably, I don't have a statistic, so I'm just making this up. But I would wager to say that it's probably what women read most, whether it's like, the teen romance, what romantasy, I couldn't think of the word, because there's a little bit of spice in that. And we are drawn to it for a reason, especially because, and when we are shut down to ourselves, when we are shut down to our sexuality and that side of us, we're going to be even more drawn to it, because women naturally are pleasure-seeking creatures. And the feminine naturally wants to feel pleasure, deep pleasure. And we have it available to us, but we have to discover it. We have to allow it. And that allowing can be scary. I don't know why it's scary. Like, it doesn't make sense logically why it's scary, but it can feel scary to have a surrender. So really that, like, tapping into those deeper parts of yourself, of experiencing more sensation, and whether that's doing yoni massage, like self-massage, and just exploring yourself, knowing what feels good. I have a jade egg practice where I use a jade egg and I meditate. I have all sorts of things that I do that I thought were so crazy before that I'm like, who even am I? Like, my younger self would be like, what have you done? Like, so like freaked out, but also like intrigued at the same time. And tapping into that creative energy looks like using orgasms as an energy creator instead of just like this fizzle out. And it's the deeper orgasms. Like, yes, clitoral orgasms are great. They're like quick, they're a little zap, they feel great, but it's the deeper orgasms, the G-spot orgasms, the full body orgasms, the cervical orgasms that really like change you, which sounds so strange, but they do. Like, I don't know if anybody's ever experienced like a level of pleasure where like maybe you start to cry or laugh during an orgasm, and like that is a great sign. Like, keep going. That's not an ending point. Like, don't freak out. Like, keep going, because there's more there. And it's really, the more you open to that sensation and that pleasure, the more it becomes available. It's a process. And so for me, it's like knowing that I can tap into that, and I do tap into that often. I also have like a breast massage practice where, and I would say that's something to go back to, like loving kindness with your body, is if you aren't inhabiting your breasts fully. Like, I've been so self-conscious of them since I was young, because my brothers would say things to me about having breasts and like, you need to stand a certain way and don't poke them out. Like, just, everybody had an idea of what I was supposed to do with my body, like I said before. And then I joke that I'm like, I'm head of the itty bitty titty committee. Like, I just have these little baby wee-wees. And then I was breastfeeding and had like beautiful boobs, like the best boobs ever. Isn't it like God's joke to us that you have these amazing boobs, but they hurt, and please don't touch them ever. And they're not for you, but they're amazing. They're perky. They're great. And then after breastfeeding 4 kids, it's like, oh, what are these like sunken socks full of like yogurt? I don't even know. Like, they're just sad. And so I started a breast massage practice through this course. And they're firmer, they're more perky, they've actually grown. Like, there's some really cool things that you can do as you choose to pull that into yourself, and really own and associate with your breasts. If you're not owning them, that's a whole part of you and a huge marker of your femininity that you're disassociating with. So those are a few things. I went kind of all over the place there.
Oh, I love it. I'm like so into it. And also for people listening, like, your breasts are glands, right? They're mammary glands. They need some attention. They need some love, but we hate them for all different reasons, right? There's so many reasons to hate your breasts, like whether or not it's like, oh, they're pancakey, like you were saying now, or they're too small. For me, it's always been they're too big. They're too in the way. They caused a lot of like embarrassment and unwanted attention as a kid, right? And so, every woman like hates her boobs for some reason, right?
Right.
And just knowing like loving on your body in that way and massage. And I do want to say for people who are squeamish and scared about touching your body and is that wrong or whatever, just because you massage your body or you learn about your body parts doesn't mean you have to masturbate. Like,
Right.
that doesn't mean like you need to be masturbating or whatever. Or if you feel more comfortable with your partner being there, like that can be so pleasurable for them to see you. I know, like,
they love that.
They love it, right? They
just
love
like
that.
rub your breasts a little bit and they're like, they're dying.
They're dying, yeah. And so I think, we get really scared or squeamish because we're like, oh no, it's wrong. Like it's wrong to touch my body. It's wrong to do these things. But there are ways, like according to your own boundaries, like there are ways you can do this and love on your body in a way that does not cross those boundaries or is not a sin if that is what you believe that it is. So it's, I think like expressing and exploring ourselves is so important. And when you're talking about the different kinds of orgasms and feeling the power of them, right? Like for women, I feel so bad because I do know so many women who have never had an orgasm before. Isn't it so sad? It's so sad.
It's like, how do you not like, and it's so funny because now there's like this whole thing of if I haven't had an orgasm for a while, like I'm cranky. Like I'm not a nice person. Like, no, they are a way, they release a ton of stress. Like if you are someone who is under a lot of stress, like why the heck are you not prioritizing having orgasms? Because it's like a whole nervous system reset. That's already in your body. It's very easy to do. It's not complicated, but it does make you have to allow it. Like you have to allow it to happen. But it's so magical.
It is. And it does bring the creative power. Jayanne and I, on our Feminine Wounds episode, we did talk about, so people can go back and talk about this, but like that your sexual energy with intention can bring things into your life, right? It can make you magnetic and bring stuff to you. And people get real scared of that too, because like, oh, is that Satan-y? And it's like, no, it's the power of you and your body. It's the power of you, like the feel good. It's just like anything else that you would do to put intention into it. Like there's all these other practices that we do and we put intention into them to, whatever it is, bring us luck or bring us love and money, or like manifestation is a big buzzword right now. And like the way you treat yourself and your body and how much pleasure you give your body is directly related to what you bring into your life. And what you can feel can come into you, like what you can manifest into your life. And so loving yourself enough to have those big orgasms, right? And I think for some people, they're like, I do not know how. I don't know how to get there. Or my husband doesn't know how. He doesn't know how to like help me out. I will say for me, like a vibrator can be a good friend. A good pal can help your husband out, can help you, help your husband help you out, and can be a great tool. And also just learning, and this is really hard too because we get into routines, but learning how to go slow, how to be slow and make it, like you said, gourmet sex, the whole sensation. And I know so many people will be like, well, but I have kids and I can never find time, to do this. I promise you there's a day, if there's time for you to like scroll, just make it a priority, right? Like make it a priority. And obviously for a lot of people, the pushback is going to be, I'm not in that place emotionally with my husband yet, or my partner. I'm not in this space. And yes, of course, you got to work that stuff out, and you got to start with the emotional stuff. You got to start with the emotional safety piece, but like make it a priority in your life. And this has been part of my journey recently too, which is part of the reason I've been so excited to talk to you, is because, for me, I realized I have a huge belief. I am so scared to be sexy. I have a huge fear of looking sexy. And that's another part of like the weight issue and like all those things, is because I'm like, oh no, if I'm sexy, something bad will happen to me again, right? Like it dives back into that sexual abuse piece. something bad will if I'm sexy, someone will target me, right? And so I think a lot of women, you know, maybe have that too. But as I've been learning, and I will say I am not a master by any means. I am learning along with every other human in this thing, but I have found some tools that are helpful for me, and I have been having really transformative experiences. And a big part of that is just like actually noticing what my body does, noticing what my body likes, like actually noticing and being in my body. And also the manifestation piece we were just talking about, the magnetic piece has been really helpful for me. And I think the Capricorn moon is like achievement. Yes, I can make it. Like I can make this about like achieving something, you know. And the other thing is, and I don't know if you've ever done this before, but even using like my imagination, I mean, come on, let's be real. Like everyone's using their imagination when they're having sex, no matter what. Like it's really hard to be like present. Like you're thinking about something in your brain, you might as well use it to help you. And for me, like my imagination has been helpful in this piece, or like embodying something, like embodying a dragon. Like I'm embodying that piece, which sounds so crazy, but it works so well. I mean, do you have any words about that? Has that been a helpful tool, or do you ever talk about this?
So kind of, it's interesting because one of the things in this course that I've pushed myself to is that idea that I shared earlier about being turned on for yourself and not needing anything external. So almost going against what you're saying, like I see what you're saying, and if you need that to get there, like use it to your advantage, 100%. There is something really cool about when you can go in, like, yes, fantasies are amazing. And you should be playing them out, like play with those, get curious at that. Like sex is a place to play too. Like feminine energy can really come out in the creative play. But I do really work on being as present as I can be. Obviously, like I have 6 billion thoughts going through my mind, but the slower you take things, the more open you are with your partner to be like, hey, things are going through my head. And the more like I talk to myself a lot to bring myself back of like, oh, I'm allowing myself to feel this. Like really bringing myself back to my body instead of my head creates more sensation and creates like a deeper experience, and allowing myself to open, like reminding myself that like, this is safe. I'm okay to feel this. That's interesting. I haven't myself like tried to embody anything in particular. I just go back to that idea of like, allowing myself to open, because it's almost like I feel this like, I don't want to say wall, but it's like I feel this point of like knowing that this is the time I need to let go, and there's this resistance, and so I'm bucking up against my own resistance. Like it's not my husband, it's not anything else, it's just like my own thing of some fear. And back to your thing about time, I'm gonna throw this in because so both my husband and I, we both work, but we work from home, and so it's so hard as an entrepreneur, and he is a manager in his company, like very, very busy. It's so hard to do this, but so rewarding at the same time, is we schedule off a block of time in the middle of the day. And we did it yesterday. It was amazing. But it was so hard first because you have to come off of work. You have to do all these things, but it's making it a priority. It's deciding like, hey, this matters enough because we know what our relationship is without it. To make that a priority. So to the people who have a lot of kids, like you make the time, just like you would make the time to go to the gym, you would make the time to go be with your friends, like you make the time for what's important to you. And I know how hard it can be. Trust me, like having little children, like, I don't know, nap time, like allow them to eat cereal for breakfast one morning a week. Like early mornings, also a fantastic time. Like commit to waking up at 5 o'clock with each other or 4:30. Like I know that sounds crazy, but having that dedicated time with one another is so valuable to the relationship.
Yeah, don't let the excuse take your pleasure away, you know, letting it be an excuse. Well, this has been an amazing and juicy conversation. It has been so fun. We've touched the 4 corners of everything. And honestly, I could talk to you about this for another 3 hours for sure. And I'm sure everybody else is intrigued by you and your magic and everything that you do. So I would love to hear, what do you have coming up? Where can people find you? How can they connect with you? Go.
Yes. So the biggest project I have coming up right now is a retreat called the Unleashed Radiant Woman. And we are going to do all the things that we've talked about here. We're going to dive into the subconscious mind, really like your beliefs about who you are, and go deep into your sexuality, body confidence, and kind of your future self, and get aligned in all those areas so that you can leave as this unleashed version of you that is just ready to go out and take on the world. That's coming up April 10th through 13th. I'm super excited about it. It's my first one, so there's a whole lot of work with it. So it's a wild ride. I also work with people one-on-one, doing a 6-month coaching package. You can do 6-month or 12-month, where we dive into, yes, a lot of these subconscious things. A lot of what I'm talking about here, I dive into with my clients. But it's really tailored to what is it that you want to work through. And we're going to focus on that, but also teach you these other things weaved in as we go through. And then I will be launching, probably by the time this comes out, I will have a membership option, which is super exciting, where we're going to have group coaching, different experts come in, and just a place where people can come and learn and be a community that's more purposeful than just a Facebook group or, finding me on Instagram. So that's what I have going on, and people can find me. I'm most active on Instagram. I am on Facebook, but Instagram's more my style. So you can find me there at Shari Grigsby. Yeah.
Amazing. And did you say your website name? What's the name of your website?
I did not. So right now my website is not fully working. So that's a whole other thing.
Okay, well, find her through Instagram.
Yeah, I will link. I have a page for my retreat.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a whole mouthful, so I'm not going to say it right now, but we'll link it. I'll make sure that you have it so people can find out.
Amazing. I'm so excited. You heard her. Go find her on Instagram. That retreat sounds amazing. Where is it being held?
The Outer Banks of North Carolina. At a beach house.
Oh gosh, I'm totally coming. I'm going to go. I'm going to totally go. I'm so excited. I'm coming. Okay. Anyway, I am so excited for this. I just got so excited. I'm so excited. Thank you so much, Shari, for sharing all your amazing goodness with us. And we will be chatting with you again, I am sure. But everyone, go find her. She's amazing, and have a great week.
Do you ever wish you could feel instantly grounded? Try putting a piece of the Earth's crust in your body. Yoni eggs have been used by humans for a very long time to improve energetic connection to the Earth, cleanse the chakras, and massage and tone the pelvic floor. I've been using them for a decade now, and every time I put one in, my anxiety just disappears. And it's all thanks to the energetic properties of these crystals. My biggest source of anxiety is usually lack of grounding. So when I'm going to start all over again. Do you ever wish you could feel instantly grounded? Try putting a piece of the Earth's crust in your body. Yoni eggs have been used by humans for a very long time to improve energetic connection to the Earth, cleanse the chakras, and massage and tone the pelvic floor. I have been using them for a decade now, and every time I put one in, my anxiety just disappears, and it's all thanks to the energetic properties of these crystals. My biggest source of anxiety is a lack of grounding, and when I wear a Yoni egg, I feel instantly grounded. And oh yes, there is definitely an improvement in other areas as well. So if you're ever curious, check it out at crunchyparadise.com. That's crunchyparadise.com, and pick up a Yoni egg today.
Thanks so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did. Please make sure to give us a 5-star rating wherever you are listening and share with someone you know. See you next week.